you were taught to basically give to the point where it's reckless. Someone was stood at the front saying how they were giving £15,000 to the church. Cruelty is a word I would definitely attach to that church. I told my colleague, who was my former counselling tutor, and she said, "You're in a cult." I was born and raised into a Christian family and spent most of my teenage years attending church. So a church was a very normal environment for me. And when I was about 18, I left the church, went off the rails a bit, did the usual prodigal son journey, came back to the church when I was 22 and ended up heavily involved in it. And was quite extreme as a Christian, even though I wasn't in a cult as such. I did lots of volunteering for the church, explored ordination in the Church of England, and then ended up working for the United Reformed Church for a couple of years, which didn't really work out too well. And then I ended up, unfortunately, in a very controlling Pentecostal charismatic church when I was around the age of about 28 or 30. It was 30. I was doing training to be a therapist, and I needed a placement, and I found this human trafficking charity. I found this charity in Liverpool called City Hearts. I met with a manager there, and they said that they didn't have any counsellors on staff, but asked me if I wanted to volunteer. So I started volunteering for them. And then I'd been there for one day. The manager just leaned over and said, "Do you want a job?" And I said yes. And that was my interview for the job. And I got a job working there as a support worker. City Hearts was run by a church called Hope City Church. And I was just finishing a contract working for the United Reformed Church. And I'd always been taught you must be in a church, otherwise you'll drift away from God, or you'll affect your faith, so you always must be attending a church. And so I thought logically, I'll start attending Hope City Church. I'd been around a few people from that church already, and there was a little bit of love bombing and flattery, and it was quite effective on me, people being so nice to me, because I'm autistic and I've struggled with friendships all my life and connecting with people. And I found that it was very powerful how encouraging and nice they were to me. And, I'd seen a little bit of that in City Heart, but I started attending Hope City, and there was lots of praise and love bombing and positivity. The strange thing about it is when I first went to the first service, there were some little red flags. For example, they were asking for money a lot, seemed quite money orientated as a church. The pastor made a comment about how the church wasn't controlling, and I remember thinking that's a little bit of a strange thing to be saying, that why would you need to say that it's not controlling to begin with? But weirdly, I kind of dismissed those thoughts because I felt so good. The church taught what is often called the prosperity gospel. So that is all about this idea. Well, on the face of it, they would say, that God wants you to be wealthy, and your faith is tied in with giving money to the church, and that's how you show your love for God. You were taught to basically give to the point where it's reckless. It's not just, and traditionally in the church, it's usually 10%, but this is over some lot, which is still a lot, by the way, and some people would argue too much, but this is to the point where you're not sure you're even going to have money to get through for the rest of the month, and people would talk about giving the rest of the savings, and there'd be these stories about how this person gave all the money away, and then miraculously God came in and rescued them with finances because they put their faith in him, which I later found out wasn't quite the truth, because some of those stories, what was happening is the families were bailing them out, and then they were telling everyone, "Oh, God's provided the money," and it's no, the families just bailed you out because they love you. I even remember one point I was sat there in the service and someone was stood at the front saying how they were giving £15,000 to the church. I think about a year into attending the church, I crossed paths with another staff member at City Hearts who also attended Hope City Church, and we ended up going for coffee, and the person was talking about how they weren't allowed to keep secrets from anyone. They'd been told that they needed to cut the mum out of the life, and the people in the church had a say about where they lived, and they'd had to move to another place. As we started to become a couple, my line manager in work called me into a meeting and started going over some rules for the relationship. I mean, I thought it was odd, but I thought it was him, that he as a person was a bit odd. I didn't make the connection to these ideas and them being the church's beliefs. So we started talking about submission to leaders, putting in ground rules for the relationship, like no kissing, you couldn't sleep in the same building, not even in the same bed, the same building. We were talking about, hypothetically getting married or getting engaged. And this really strange thing happened where, she started talking, but they were like somebody else's words, like a personality switched. If I was going to propose, I had to go to the leaders, these people above her who she was accountable to, and they would tell me how to propose. I wasn't even allowed to choose how to do it. We were only together for a few months, but over the time, this picture was building up of you're not in control here. We can pull the plug whenever we want. Inevitably, the relationship broke up. And that's when things got really odd and really weird. So we broke up on Christmas. I got this text message basically saying, I don't want to see you again. But I remember the moment I read it, I thought, she has not written this. So then my line manager randomly started deciding we were going to meet together every single week, and I think under the banner of supporting me. But he started going on and on about submission, and every time I'd share certain views, he'd just totally ignore me, talk across me. It did not matter what I felt, what I thought. It was really cruel. It was the cruelty is a word I would definitely attach to that church. The cruelty of that response now, I believe, traumatised me because I thought I must have been a really bad person. I was really getting unwell and very confused because I was spiritualising it, thinking, what's God doing? And, thinking you're not allowed to leave your church because you've been told you must always be in a church. I almost wanted to prove myself and show them I was a good person. So I got more involved. I went closer to the abuser. There was periods of time when I wasn't eating, and I was going more and more off the rails because I was listening to their teachings to deal with the situation that they had caused, and their teachings were also harmful as well. And this is what cults do. They break you, and then they start blaming you for being broken when they caused it. I just started teacher training because that was part of my exit route, just trained to be a teacher. And I told my colleague, who was my former counselling tutor, and she said, "You're in a cult." She just said, "You're in a cult, watch this documentary." And it was Leah Remini's Scientology and the Aftermath. And I binge watched the whole thing, and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly the same. Some of the things Hope City Church were doing were like Scientology. And finally, I got the courage, and I sent a little bit of a complaint summary, and that was it. I was resigned. Psychologically, it took me a long time to get my brain out of it. The deep shame of thinking that I was this bad person, it took me a long time. It took me a long time to open up. But this really strange thing happened in 2018, and I think I was in the second year of my teacher training by then. And one of the teachers was off sick, and they needed someone to cover these lessons. And I said, she'll just tell my story. And the most bizarre thing happened on the morning of me doing that. The Channel 4 news report came out about City Hearts, and I went in to tell the story on the day that they'd been exposed on the news, so which was unbelievable. The validation I got from that news report was off the charts. I imagine going through a load of stress and shame, and then the validation comes on national television. I can't even begin to tell you how powerful that is. Where You think you're this, and then someone on television is telling the entire country that you were right. You know, that the power of that was unbelievable. I just sat there crying my eyes out at the computer because I was like, this is what I was saying, that there's people on television talking about being controlled in City Hearts, and I was saying that and they were gaslighting me, and now it's on television. And so that came out, and that on the day was the first day I shared my story before ever. When people leave cults, they're very isolated. They've been robbed of the opportunity to be creative, to have fun, because, you know, creativity and fun and anything like that is useless to cult leaders unless they can monetize it or exploit it in some way. So when people are in cults, they're often not allowed to have hobbies, not allowed to game. And so as part of the healing process, even for me personally and for lots of people, fun is essential. And so I thought recently, like, why don't I just set up an online gaming community on Discord so people who've been in cults can start rebuilding a community, but the focus isn't around all this awful stuff that's happened. The focus is around, you know, TV, movies, gaming, hobbies, things like that. And because it will be with people who also get the experiences, they'll feel less lonely. Because one of the problems with when people have been in cults is the experience is so alien to everybody else outside of the cults. They struggle to connect with them. And I have heard people say likened it to like a soldier going off to fight in a war. And when they come back, they're around all their family and friends, but they still feel like it different because they've been through something that they can't really explain. I've heard people compare those experiences before, like trying to integrate back to be around people who just don't really understand the cult experience. Is very difficult. So I thought I'll set up a gaming community, and that's what Game Haven is. It's just in its infancy, but that was a way of helping ex-cult members that wasn't about therapy. It was about something more positive and like forward-looking. So I set it up a few months ago, and that's like a free thing. Obviously, my counselling practice is a private practice, but this is just like a project that people can just join for free, and because it's just a community. So. That's what I was working on recently, because I do that as a job anyway, with young people who are autistic. So I thought might as well transfer the skills over to the cult stuff and marry the two interests, gaming and cult stuff. So yeah.